Probably something that's mostly cracked, so.
So we've got people coming.
We have somebody having.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Do we have? I haven't looked. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the National Science Foundation's Graduate Research Fellowship Program. The applications are due in October, but it does take a little bit of time for you to pull it all together, so that's why we're meeting now. Some of you met with us in the spring when we talked about things that you could be doing over the summer to get ready. And so this is kind of the follow-up to that, but also even if you didn't meet with us in the spring, you do have plenty of time if you start now to get ready to apply in October. The people in this room today that are going to help you with this, we have Dr. Laura Argus, who is the Associate Dean for Research and Creative Activities in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. She helps to oversee all the research programs in the college, as well as she has been a reviewer for the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, so she knows what it takes, what reviewers are looking for. I'm Carol Oxiger. I'm the Grants Development Coordinator for the college, and I've been doing this a long time. And so we're just here to help you with that, to help you we've had several students get these awards, and they're fantastic and exciting. And we would like to have as many students have the opportunity to obtain this award. And then we have Tracy Combe, who's here with us. She is new to our team, but she's going to be the one that is helping with submissions.
Grab some needed.
And we'll get into this a little bit more later. If you are planning to have your award come to CU Denver, there's a step that if we do it now, makes the award process go a lot smoother when you get it. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So, just a second, I'm trying to get this to me. There we go. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to talk about the program at NSF and why NSF does this. We're going to talk about eligibility, what you need to be able to apply, how to prepare your application, what are some resources for you, and then we're here to answer your questions. If you have any questions, feel free. Don't wait till the end to ask along the way. Like I said a little bit ago, for those that you've joined us, we're having a hard time with the audio. So those of you that are on Zoom, if you put your questions in the chat, Tracy's monitoring that, and she'll let us know when there's a question. And we'll, for recording purposes, we will put this back. We'll repeat those questions, as well as making so that everybody gets to hear what was asked. All right. So why would the National Science Foundation, which is funded with your tax dollars and your parents' tax dollars and everybody's tax dollars, want to do this? Well, it's about ensuring the viability of our nation in the future. If we don't train up our own scientists, and we're just not going to be competitive in the world. And so the only way that we know to do that is to start here and younger. And so this is a big push of the National Science Foundation. That is one of the missions of the National Science Foundation that was given to them from Congress when they first set up the NSF after World War II. They are also looking to broaden participation in science and engineering of underrepresented groups. So women, minorities, persons with disabilities, veterans, people that have a little bit different, unique backgrounds, that they are looking for that as well. That being said, it can be a little bit difficult to demonstrate that in your application, but we're going to talk about that today so that you can hear about that as well. This slide's a jumble, but it goes through a bunch of things. So what is the award? Well, if you're given the award, you will get $37,000 a year in a stipend or salary for 3 years. And $12,000 a year for tuition. Now, the $12,000 doesn't come to you, it comes to us as the institution, and we cover all of your tuition and fees.
Or whatever graduate program.
Yeah. So you get that for 3 years, but you have 5 years to spend it. So you can take a year off if you have like a medical issue. We've had some people who were in the Army that they were deployed for a year. So we've had, but you have the 5 years to spend it.
It's also possible, sorry, that you might move from a master's program into a PhD program, and there might be a 1-year gap. You can bring it with you to the PhD program as long as you haven't expended, up until you've expended 3 years of your eligibility.
So the nice thing about this particular program is that when you are done with your graduate degree and graduate and you're done with this program, you don't have to provide other service. This is truly a scholarship program. And when you've completed your commitment to this and your degree, then you don't have any other commitments. So it's a really nice thing. We'll get in the little graphic about the eligible fields of study that does have a little bit to do about who's eligible to apply. And we'll get through a few other things as we go through. So, so far, but just as some highlights, they have offered over 60,000 of these over the years. They plan on, if you look at the request for proposals, they plan on awarding about 2,500 this next year. I will say that that's a pretty high award amount, but there's a lot of people who apply. So the trick is to put forth your best foot, and that's what we're here to help you do today. Just again, this is a reiteration, 3 years of financial support. The fellowship is for you. It doesn't come to the institution like other research grants that your mentors may be applying for. The research grant comes to the institution on behalf of that person. If that person leaves, we can choose as an institution to keep that grant and have somebody appoint somebody else as the PI. That is not possible here. This is yours. It goes with you. So if you need to transfer from one institution to another, or if you're a senior and you're applying to thinking that you're going to be going for a graduate program and you're not sure where you're going, you have to indicate an institution when you apply, but that at the time of the award, you can tell them where you want it to go. So it goes with you. And it's not hard to take it with you. We've had a few people transfer in, so it works out pretty well. So this is what we're going to talk about in eligibility. There's 4 components. It's the field of study, you yourself, and then there's some ways to verify that. There's a couple of different eligibility levels, and we'll go through those. So the field of study determines your application deadline, because there's a week in October that all the applications are due, and it starts with the life sciences and ends with, I can't remember, physics, maybe at the end of the week. So you have to know what your field of study is, as that determines where you apply.
We have the deadlines a little bit later.
Yeah,
Can't remember.
I've been looking at a lot of dates lately. So if your specific subfield is not represented, so you do have to choose a major field like chemistry and physics and engineering or math. You have to choose, but then there's a subfield that you can choose from. And if your specific subfield is not listed, you do have an option to put in another subfield. And the reason why it's important to try to get that to be the best is that while they do have, we're going to talk about the review process, they do have kind of a broad-based review, but they do try to make sure that there is somebody on the panel that has some understanding of that specific field. So they do try to make sure the reviewers, there's at least somebody in your review group that understands your field. So it's important that you try to you're setting the review correct for yourself, as well as also acknowledging your eligibility based on your career, the field that you're choosing. You do have to be a US citizen, national or permanent resident to apply. Because I'll just be honest, this is federal taxpayer dollars. And the Congress has been, from the beginning, very clear that we're about building the base of science in the United States, not in some other country at this time. They do it, we do that in other ways, but for this program, not. You must also intend to enroll or be enrolled in a full-time, can't be going part-time, in a research-based master's or doctoral degree program in the eligible fields of study that we just looked at. If you've previously been offered a GRFP, you must have declined by the time you apply. You must have declined by the acceptance deadline, which was, so if you're awarded, they give you like a month to decide if you're going to accept it, and you have to have declined. You have to physically have said you're not accepting it. If you've never previously applied, so if you're in your graduate program already and you've already applied, you can't apply again. You can only apply once when you get to your graduate program. If you're like a senior in your undergrad program, you can apply once as a senior. And if you didn't get it at that time, then you have another opportunity to apply as a graduate student. But once you start your graduate studies, you only have one option, okay? You cannot have previously earned a doctoral or terminal degree in any field, and you've never earned a master's or professional degree, like a joint bachelor's degree in any field, or completed more than one academic year. So let's say that you're in your graduate program, you're starting your second year. You've not completed your second year, so you can still apply now. If you're in your graduate degree program and you're starting your third year, you can no longer apply. So there's kind of a sweet spot of when you can apply.
May I ask a question from the chat?
Yes.
Can you apply as a part-time student if you intend to go full-time by the time the fellowship starts?
Yes.
Yes.
So you just, to accept the award, you have to be a full-time student. You cannot be a part-time student and have this award. Okay? All right. So they have a tool, and when we share these slides with you, you can go to the NSF GRFP website and you can answer some questions and they will tell you if you are eligible or not to apply. That's just a great way to double check. The very first thing that you do when you go into, and you'll see this in a few minutes, that when you go in to start your application is before they let you start the application, you have to certify that you are eligible, okay? And just remember, this is a federal process. And I think if you lie to the feds, there might be some problem.
It's not recommended, certainly by us.
Okay, so this is again the number of times you can apply. So if you are a level 1, you can apply an unlimited number of times until you enter any post-bac studies. So if you're an undergraduate and you want to apply in your junior year and you want to apply in your senior year, you can do that, okay? But at any given time, you can only submit one application. So let's say, like as an undergrad, you're not certain if you're going to pursue a postdoc in chemistry organic or chemistry inorganic. You haven't made that decision yet, although, thank you. Anyway, you cannot put in 2 different applications. You can only do one, okay? If you're a level 2 to 4, you can only apply one time. So you're a first-year grad student, you're a student that's enrolled in a combined bachelor's master's program, a grad student who's not completed more than 1 year. We just described what that was. If you're a returning grad student and you've had more than a 2-year break. So if you had to leave your graduate studies program, and we've had somebody who's done this and successfully got funded, he left his grad program, came back, I don't know, 10 years later?
Many years later.
Many years. It was a long time. It was a big gap. He was not a spring chicken. And he was able to get his GRFP, and he was really successful and really fun to work with. So if you know anybody, you know, if they've had that break, encourage them to apply.
So
Okay.
I'm just going to offer up something at this point, and that is that if you're a senior, there's no risk in applying, right? You could apply. You could even take a year off before starting in graduate school and apply again. If you didn't get the award in your senior year, you could be working and you could apply again. So there's not really a choice to be made about, I'm cutting off my other opportunities. But once you're in a graduate program, now the decision actually has meaning, right? So many of you, some of you may be in your first year of your graduate program, right? And you can apply now. That makes you a level 2 or 3, I think 2. And so you can apply this year. But what that means is if you apply this year, you can't apply again next year. If, as a first-year student, you think, well, maybe I should apply in my second year, you will have some more developed research project, most likely. I will talk in the portion where we talk about how these get reviewed. They do expect different amounts of information when you are applying at different levels. But as a first-year graduate student, you really do want to make a decision this year about, do I apply this year or do I wait and apply at the beginning of my second year? As long as you've only completed that first year of school, even if you're in your second year, you're still eligible to apply. So just time to think about it from your perspective.
It's a good conversation to have with your mentor. Okay. So what does it take to apply? You have to have, there's certain application materials, we'll go through that. There's a review process that Dr. Argus is going to talk with us about, and the review criteria. So obviously you're going to structure your materials to address the review criteria. And with the reviewers in mind, you're writing to them and trying to convince them that they should give you, you know, almost $200,000. So it's worth the energy and effort, I think. So what are the components? You have to remember that this is different from a research grant. If you approach this as a research grant, you will not be successful. And the reason is because, as I told you from the outset, this is a program about developing the future scientists for our country. And so it's about you. Certainly there's a component of your potential as a researcher. And so there is comments and discussion about research, but it is not about research, it's about you. Yes.
Question from the chat. What would the potential benefit be of applying in a second year of grad school as opposed to the first year?
So I can give a little more detail about this when we're talking about the review section, because you'll see sort of how some of this plays out. But as Carol's going to go into, there's a personal statement that's not going to change a lot. You know, who you are and what your background is to get you to this point, that's not going to change a lot. But it is true that you may have a better idea of what your research is going to look like, and you may feel sort of better prepared to do that. You may also have better connections with faculty who need to write letters of reference. Because if you're just entering your graduate program, they're going to be hard pressed to talk about your potential as a researcher. So there's just, if you have a lot of undergraduate connections that will help you with that piece of the review, then you know you're ready to roll. The other thing to consider though is if you're in a master's program and you only want to complete a master's program, if you wait till your second year, you're not going to get funding until you've completed your second year. It's going to be hard to use 3 years of funding, right? If you know you want to go on to a PhD program, then you're strategizing about when I'll use my 3 years of support. So there's a whole bunch. I'm an economist, so I could probably write equations that you could optimize that decision. But there's a lot to consider, and I'm happy to chat after the meeting offline.
I would also say that another thing to consider is if you've not had much research experience, hands-on research experience in your field, you could use this year to get that in a variety of ways. And that could be very helpful to you as well. If you are interested in, say, like NSF is very interested in something we're going to call broader impacts. So what is the impact of your research on your community? And if you are very interested in, say, like working with, you know, elementary age students and getting them exposed to science and excited about science, but you've not had a chance to really do that yet, you could use this year to volunteer at an elementary school and build up that component of your piece. So there is some strategizing to think about doing that, okay? So back to what's required. There's personal information. So you have to submit a CV with your education, work, and other experience. So other experience would include any volunteer opportunities or other experiences that you've had to do lab work or work with the community, you know, those sorts of things. Your transcripts, your educational transcripts do have to be provided. Don't shy away if they don't look perfect. I will tell you that nobody's looks perfect. And if they say they do, well, they've doctored them. I'm just going to say that. So just submit your transcripts. This is what I find interesting. So there's a statement, it's your personal, relevant background and your future goals. This is about you. They want 3 pages of that. Okay? Your graduate research plan. This is what you're going to do as a graduate researcher. They only want 2 pages. Think about the difference. They've got a total of 5 pages they're going to give you. They give you more time to talk about you than to talk about your research, because you are the important person. What that also means is that if you need to change your research as a graduate student, like, I don't want anybody to think about, oh, I've got to know today what I'm doing as a graduate student. Put your best foot forward, but once you get this award, if you need to change it, change it. Okay? In fact, they tell you, they encourage you to do that. And then you have to have reference letters. You have to have at least 2, but you can submit up to 5 names. And then when you submit your names, you rank them. Like, so if all 5 people submit their reference letters for you, they'll take the top 3. They prefer to have 3, and they only go up to 3. And they will take the 3 that you say, this is my top 3. Okay? Don't tell your referees that they're ranked number 5. Okay? Just tell them that you need to have 5 and just let it go at that. Okay? All right. So the personal statement. What are the parts of that? This is where you outline your educational professional development. So how do you envision that graduate school will prepare you for the career that you are pursuing? You should give specific examples. Don't talk in general. Don't say, Albert Einstein inspired me and those sorts of things. Be specific. Like, if Albert Einstein inspired you, what did that cause you to change in your life or do in your life? Okay. Be very, very specific. Again, you've got 3 pages. They're 8.5 by 11 pages, not 9 by 14. 1-inch margins. I think it's 12-point font, or it might be 11-point font. I don't remember at this point, but it's in the checklist.
Pick the one they tell you.
They only give you 1 font and 1 font size, so don't disregard that. Okay. You have to have separate sections that say intellectual merit and broader impacts. And when they say that, they want a subheading, and you're better off to have nothing else on that line. So when it says intellectual merit, then you start the paragraph underneath it. Okay. Intellectual merit has to do with what's the value of this in the scientific community. Broader impacts are what's the impact on our community of having this work done. Okay. You need to address how you use your fellowship to advance knowledge in STEM fields, the benefits to society, and the potential for your future leadership and global engagement. Okay. Emphasize your passion with research, unique characteristics that you have with your experience with research, your strengths, and this can just be your own self-assessment, but if you tend to bash yourself, stop it.
Working on it.
Yeah.
I've even got some tips for that one.
And listen to your grandmother if you can, because your grandmother will only point out your good things. Okay. All right. And how collaborative you are. Narrative form is good, but it's not a biography. So you got to find the sweet spot where you're telling a story, but you're also writing in a convincing way.
You don't have to recount your whole life. Just make sure you've got in mind what ideas you want them to remember. And so that list is a really good list of things. Figure out how to sort of work it into that. All right. There was a question.
I was going to see if we got back around to reference letters. Do reference letters have to be from CU or from the current academic year?
No. Your reference letters, the people that write your letters, and we'll talk about this in just a couple of minutes in detail, they need to talk about who you are as a scientist and as a student, and they need to know you well and be able to do that. So they can be anybody but your family. So it could be a former employer. It could be a high school teacher that you've kept in touch with. It just needs to be someone that knows you well and it's not a family member. Okay? So your graduate research plan, this is where you talk about what kind of research you hope to do as a graduate student. So you need to present an original research topic, describe the idea, your approach, and resources. If you need to provide citations, which is good, yeah, again, but your citations have to fit within the 2-page limit. So they need to be short. Again, intellectual merit and broader impacts need to be separately identified with those subheaders, okay? And so intellectual merit is the potential of your research to advance knowledge and transform your field. And the broader impacts is the potential for the impact in our world and community, okay? The research topic that you discuss should be a field listed in the solicitation. So what they're saying is everything needs to line up. Shouldn't be doing this scraggly thing over here, okay? For those of you on Zoom, it shouldn't be doing that. You want to emphasize that you're excited, that you have some unique technical knowledge and skills, what mentoring and training you expect from your faculty mentors, the feasibility of you doing this, the big picture importance of your research, and a realistic plan of activities and tasks, okay? Your reference letters, so this is where we, I think, get to that question. They will need to also address the intellectual merit and broader impacts of you as a scientist and of what the work that you're doing. They do need to they need to address your relationship, the potential you have for contributing to the US science and engineering workforce, your academic potential and your relevant prior experiences. They can talk about your proposed research if they know it, and any other information that they think will aid the reviewers in assessing your capacity to contribute to the scientific field.
Carol, a question from the chat. Should our personal statement and research plans also be single-spaced?
They must be single-spaced.
They must.
Yep. So each letter is limited to 2 pages, single space, as Gabrielle noted. All referees must have an NSF research.gov account, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. If they don't, there's a quick way for them to go in and do it, and there's actually a video that will help them step by step through it. And we'll have a link to that you guys can access and send to them once you invite them. They do have to submit their letters via research.gov. And once you put their name in your list of reviewers on your application, they get an email generated from research.gov that has an invitation code, and they need that invitation code in order to be able to submit your letter. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Is it quiet in here?
I was curious this is a little bit back, but the CV, the resume, is there like a length maximum for it?
I can't think of that.
I think there is, but
I think there's, I
I
have to
don't
look
remember
it
if it's
up.
1 or 2
Okay.
pages. They're relatively brief. but
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and look that up. When Laura's talking, I'll go look.
They may be in a checklist, but
Yeah, it might be in my checklist. You think I would know that? I've done this for years, but I don't know. So this is where I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Argus to talk about how you get selected.
okay. So I am an economics professor. That doesn't right off the bat scream you are a scientist, although economists like to think of ourselves as scientists. But broadly, economics fits into the social sciences. So if you looked at that list and you didn't happen to be a chemist or a physicist or a biologist, the social science are listed up there. If you go on to NSF site, you'll see a lot more detail about different areas, but it includes sociology and political science and a wide range of things, and obviously economics. So I have served as a reviewer, and I'm on the panel that looks specifically at economics GRFP applications. So a little bit of what I'm going to tell you may be specific to the way the discussions go in that particular group, but I think for the most part, all of this is going to be pretty clear. The National Science Foundation has scientific officers and program staff that meet with those committees. And so they guide these discussions in pretty much the same way all along. So just very briefly about how the selection process happens. So they put together a panel, and our panel has somewhere on the order of 25 or so members in the room, all with a similar area of specialization. And what comes out of that process is that the applications are sort of sorted into groups. And the top group from the initial reviews is the one that gets talked about pretty substantially during the meetings. Now, any reviewer can say, wait, this wasn't in the top group. I'd like to add it for discussion. So there's other ways that applications get discussed, but some chunk of that is going to be a group of, individually, 3 different reviewers reviewing your application. And so they get sorted into this top tier, the top tier is about 30% of applications. And once you're in the top tier, you're likely to get an award at over 50%. And then there's a group of honorable mentions, which is also very prestigious. It doesn't give you the money. That's the bad part. But it's still really worthwhile. If you're applying to graduate programs, being a GRFP honorable mention is a pretty big deal. Okay, can you flip it? All right, so here you see the size of the panels. I would say ours was probably 20 to 25. They're mostly professors, but they are professional researchers as well. These are typically going to be people with PhDs who are pretty actively engaged in research. And like we mentioned, you can expect that the people reading your application do have a fairly detailed familiarity with your general area of study, maybe not your particular topic, right? So keep that in mind. You won't know who the panel members are. They're very careful about conflicts of interest. If they're from any of the institutions that you list on your resume or anything like that, they won't participate in the discussion, nor the places you're proposing to go. You start with 3 panelist reviews, and so there's this large group of applications. And you can see the way these are scored is poor, fair, good, very good, and excellent. So there's not a really strict numerical amount. We're sort of putting applications into groups, and you're scored on different aspects of the application. Certainly, your broader impact score is important, your intellectual merit score is important, and then you give the application an overall score. I will say that sometimes reviewers have differing opinions. That's where the discussion becomes important. And so there's lots of opportunities for applications to get a fair amount of attention. So about 1/3 of the total that are submitted are discussed in a fully day-long meeting. So it's a long time. We now do it on Zoom. It's not as fun as it used to be in person, but and then like this slide says, once you reach that group, the award rate's pretty high. We don't know actually who ends up getting the awards. We do know what the scores in our groups are, but NSF has to decide how many awards they have available, how many were submitted across all the different disciplines. Okay. All right, so the pieces that get reviewed, you're going to get an intellectual merit rating, and it'll be excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor. And there will be a comment section where each of the reviewers provide comments about what they saw as strengths or challenges in the application. And then the whole committee gets to read all of those, and that's part of the discussion. And they read them in advance. So they're seeing 3 comments on each application. Broader impacts, very similarly. It's a different set of things you want to try to communicate, and I'll talk about those. Each application is then given a score, and there's simply the 10 numeric scores at the top. So 40 to 50 is excellent, 30 to 40 is very good, and so on. applicants actually receive comments on their applications. So especially if you're a senior or somebody who's applying before starting graduate school, you'll actually get comments back about what the reviewers saw as the strength in your application. Sure, Lydia, we will post everything and we'll email the availability of the materials to you. And so that's really good for somebody who can apply again. But for those of you that that's your only application, you will actually get comments back as well. Okay. So what exactly is intellectual merit? So Carol already mentioned that there's these two main documents that you're going to produce. And so you're going to make a personal statement that describes things about you and your path through education, life, interest in research, all of those things. And then the second one is your research document, right? What do I want to do as research in the big picture? Specifically, do I have a research project that I can describe for you? Both of those have intellectual merit. I think that most students would think, well, my research plan is the intellectual merit. That's where I show, what I'm going to do for science. And the personal statement is broader impacts. What do I bring to the table? But you can't think of it that way. Both documents need to have both parts. So for intellectual merit, in your personal statement, some of that is, these are all the classes I took. I got interested in research, and here's what I did to prepare myself to be a researcher. Right? Here are the activities I went and engaged. I volunteered in a research lab. I did these things because I'm interested in contributing intellectually to my now chosen area of study. And it can be a little bit about, well, I thought I wanted to do this, and I got really excited about science when? In high school? My sophomore year of college, whatever it is. And that's when I really started preparing. They want to see that you're thoughtful about how you created an environment where you as a researcher can be successful. Doesn't have to have been perfect, right? You can have said, boy, I didn't think I was going to do anything like this. I wasn't even sure I was going to go to college, but once I figured it out, this is what I did. Okay. So intellectual merit in the personal statement is about you, but your sort of intellectual ability or preparation or just thought about where you're headed. In the research plan, obviously you can see the link to intellectual merit there. You want to be sort of grounded in the way people in that field do research. You want to have some experience understanding how research is done in that field. We'll talk about this in a minute, but we do know the applications are actually grouped by level. And we typically talk about the level ones first. I'm not sure if that's unique to my review group, but those are students who have not yet started graduate school. They're not going to be able to say, this is the cutting edge stuff. I've already done it. I know how to solve these equations, or I know how to do. That's not what it's going to look like. But you do need to say, I've read research, I've worked with somebody on research, or this is what I'm excited about in research in my field. And then if you're in a graduate program, especially in your second year, you want to show that you can think about what techniques in your field would be applied to the type of research questions you're interested in. So there's kind of this range of ways you can show intellectual merit. Okay. Oh, the final phrase on there is that adequate institutional resources are available. It is something that we're looking for. It's a little bit hard to do that. If you're applying as a senior, you're not at the institution where you're going to do your graduate research. And so you can talk about where you'd like to go, but almost any place that has a PhD or master's program in your area of study is in an environment that can provide the resources. But you want to talk about sort of what you're going to consider in choosing a graduate program, that you want somebody who's, where the faculty are doing field work in anthropology, if that's what you want to do, just so that you can sort of show that you're aware of what institutional support's necessary to do those things. Okay.
Where would you put that information?
So you can work it in wherever. In the personal statement, there is a section for goals, sort of educational goals. And so if you're if you're planning to carry the GRFP with you into another program, you can talk about, this is what I'm looking for in a graduate program. These are graduate programs I'm applying to. Just sort of give them a sense that you have to match that up with your research also. If you're already in the program where you want the funding, then either in the personal statement or the research, you can talk about, I'm working in this lab with these people doing this kind of work, but this is what I'm gonna do, right? So you wanna establish yourself as a potentially independent researcher also. Okay, other questions? Did anything come in the chat? Okay. Broader impacts then is a different thing. Intellectual merit, the focus will be on, can they look at you as a potential funded fellow and say, we think you have the potential to contribute intellectually to your discipline, right? That's where intellectual merit comes in on that front. Your research itself, is this the description of a project or a future plan or an area of interest that has the potential to contribute to your discipline? That's intellectual merit. Broader impact is then anything beyond that. And it can take a whole bunch of different forms, which we'll talk about. Here's a partial list. It's going to show up in a couple different places. But does the research that you're going to do, or do you as a person who's going to have a graduate degree in something very specialized, how's that going to affect society at large? It can be broader impacts because though you may be a mathematician doing some computational techniques in math, it can be applied to a whole bunch of different fields. That's important. That's a broader impact, even though it's also intellectual. But it can also be that your work is going to broaden the research workforce of the future, that you are going to help broaden the workforce, right? You have ideas or background that other people don't have, or perspectives, and that's going to help make the the science community broader. Or you're going to involve other people. You're going to work with, Carol mentioned, working with elementary school students or public school students. And particularly if you can say, look, there's school districts near our campus, right, where students don't think about going to college and don't think about research careers. And those are the ones that I would like to reach out to and show them that somebody who maybe came from a background similar to theirs is taking those steps, or working with school teachers to help them excite students about science in areas that, will broaden representation in your fields. Improving STEM education, that can sort of have both of those. You work with teachers, you can help teachers do better at teaching STEM education in the areas where you have expertise. Just raising public awareness of what you do. Some people would have like a blog that they do, right? And help people understand some technicalities of what you plan to do research on, but make it accessible to people who aren't themselves, doctoral level scientists.
Well, I worked with a student who was doing a series of YouTube videos because he came from a homeschool family. And so he geared those towards homeschool parents of experiments that they could do with their children in a homeschool environment. So, just things like that you can do. And if you're interested in something like that, you could start it now before you apply. So,
exactly.
Not like you have 8,000 other things to do to start a semester, and I did that. But just saying.
No, but if you can point to it that I've already created one of these, or I did, when I was a senior in high school, we worked with students in this way, or whatever, anything you can point to that you can describe that you have a passion for it. It's always best if you can back it up with some experience somehow, where you've tried to
like a portfolio.
Gain skills. Yep. Exactly. And most of that will fit in your personal statement, but you never know what won't overlap into your research plan as well. So partnerships between academia, industry, and others. And so if in fact you're in an applied area and you have industry connections and they're interested in workforce issues, or you're tackling problems that are important in a commercial setting or a sort of research and development that often happens in the private sector. That's all broadening the impact. Improving national security. So that's really something that NSF has as just a part of its mission as well. But we are scientists, but if that can be applied to areas that improve national security, that's also a positive. Increasing economic competitiveness. That's clearly another sort of aspect of getting the skilled science workforce enhancement. Infrastructure for research and education. There's a couple things that aren't on here. I think they are on a later slide, but in case they're not, I'm going to mention them. If your research itself addresses important social issues that help us figure out how to make policy that addresses social inequities, health disparity. I shouldn't say the word health. NSF is a little touchy because NIH is the National Institutes of Health and they have lots of money. So you want to be careful about how much you talk about health. You don't want to be doing clinical research. That's not likely to get funded. But if you've actually worked with policymakers on something, right? Or lots of what we do, if you're studying climate change, if you're studying pollution, if you're studying, in the social science field, there's a lot of room for that, right? Often you will see political scientists or sociologists or economists studying things that help us understand how people behave and therefore how to implement policy. So improving education and having an impact on policy that helps society at large are also broader impacts. Okay. So this is going to overlap some of what we just talked about, but in your academic qualification, so in your personal statement, you do want to highlight the fact that once I figured out what I wanted to do, I really worked hard at coming up with a rational plan for how to get the background knowledge I need to get where I am today, to be ready to learn from a graduate program, enter a graduate program, complete my graduate program, but show that there is at some point a thoughtful trajectory. If you've done additional training, we've had students who referred to things like, well, I really wanted to learn about this as an undergraduate. I didn't have these courses available, so I went and did MOOCs from Harvard, or I did online free classes from Coursera about Bayesian mathematical analysis, whatever it is. That just shows initiative and clearly that you've thought about what you need to become successful. Talk about your research experience for sure. They are going to try to invest in people that have a potential to impact the research workforce. Highlight anything that you've done up to this point, even if it was high school's harder, but some students have done sort of summer internships and that sort of thing. But as an undergraduate, or certainly if you're in a graduate program, highlight what you're already doing. Additional training, work, and experiences. Oh, if you had a job where you worked as a lab tech and that was one of the things that really changed your life and you went, yeah, I don't want to just be the lab tech forever. Now I want to be the person designing research experiments, right? But talk about the skills you've gained there. Independent, seeking out other educational opportunities. And they also want to understand that you're pretty motivated to get to the end goal that they're looking for. And that is to be a researcher who's contributing scientifically and brings a perspective that might be underrepresented in the current group of researchers. It's not to say that any one of those is a necessary requirement, but anything you can do to highlight that. Overcoming obstacles is a part of that, right? There will be students who, were the top of their class and went through and everything sort of fell in line really neatly. There will be definitely awardees who did not follow just the obvious, simple path from class valedictorian to Ivy League school to PhD, fully funded scholarship. And if there's something in your record that looks like a misstep, talk a little bit about it, right? If they can understand, they're going to notice, right? If your freshman year of college was a disaster, That is not uncommon. Talk about it, but what happened to turn that around and why is that not going to happen again? And so, if there's just some obvious things that you want to bring to their attention and you can make those understandable. If you had a medical issue that came up and it just turned one semester into a really tough path.
If you lived through COVID.
Yeah, well, we're going to see a lot of transcripts that probably look pretty different. A lot of pass-fail grade, well, passing grades, hopefully, but it does change, I think, the academic records that they're going to see. How can you demonstrate your academic qualifications? Put them in your personal statement, put them in your research plan. If you say, I'm doing this kind of research, I have done X, that can be worked into your research plan if that's where you think it's appropriate.
Are there printed guidelines for references regarding what they'll need to address in the letter?
We'll talk about that in a minute. We will provide some, NSF provides some. So this is the part where if you're not good at bragging, this can become a little bit difficult, right? I'm one of those people. I'm much better at telling what's great about other people than myself, but you're the one writing the personal statement. This is what we're stuck with. Your letter writers should be told that they should talk about what they think is exceptional about you. So we'll provide a little bit of guidance on that front, but you're going to have to figure out how to say, I'm a really good student. I get great grades. I work really hard. There are ways to say it. So somebody said, well, I agreed to work as a teaching assistant as an undergraduate. No. I was selected because of my strong record in X, Y, and Z, I was selected to serve as a teaching assistant as an undergraduate. That's unusual, right? Try to, even if you don't want to use the, adjectives to say I'm the smartest person in my undergraduate class, give evidence that shows what you did was exceptional. So figure out how to do it. We will provide some sort of review feedback for you if you can get to us early enough. And the easiest ones are these more general statements, right? It's going to be hard for me to read your chemistry research proposal. I avoided chemistry. I'm good at math. I can do math and stat proposals. I can, but my advice on a chemistry proposal is 0, except put pretty pictures in there because they look good. But hopefully you have research mentors who can help with that. You can talk about your academic qualifications in your research plan. We already mentioned that. And your references should highlight that you're ready to begin to do independent research, right? So in all of those places, you can find ways to highlight that you're prepared for this academic. Your transcripts go in, there's not much you can do for that. Oh, in your CV or resume, highlighting awards is a good idea as well. They're pretty clear about putting it. Yes.
So I was just gonna say, going back to the references, you should probably give your references a good draft of your personal statement. And if you have your scientific statement worked out, so they have something to build upon. Or you can say, I'm writing and these are the things I'm highlighting. Can you highlight these in your letter? Alignment between your reference letters and your documents is really helpful.
Okay, broader impact. So remember, both in your personal statement, there has to be an intellectual merit section. Some of that will absolutely be your academic preparation, right? That's an obvious intellectual merit about you as a person. And then in your research plan, both documents, remember, should have a broader impact section, heading, and then write stuff. I've seen plenty that broader impacts is just a couple sentences. Don't do it. Broader impacts is actually a topic of conversation in the review process, and it's going to impact your score. So think creatively. There's a lot of ways to do it. In your personal statement, it can be, in what ways do you bring a diverse perspective to the research workforce, even if it's leadership, right? In what ways can I be a leader and can I include lots of voices at the table to help influence the research workforce. Translating what you do to the population at large or educators, we've talked about that. Importance of your work to other disciplines and informing policy. So that was sort of my more targeted list. How are they demonstrated? Be sure it's in both documents. Include what you can about how you individually enhance diversity, but experience with diverse populations, et cetera. That should be in your personal statement. Broader impacts of your research can be then plans to disseminate it, how you might make it accessible to other disciplines or the general public or educators. That can work into either section. Okay. Okay, so with regard to your research plan, there's different people who will read this. They are people trained in your area broadly. I'm an economist. I don't know a lot about monetary policy, right? If that's your jam, you're going to write all about it. And yet I'm going to go, yeah, I know how the Federal Reserve works. I know what monetary policy is. I know how it works, but I'm not going to know that whether you target interest rates or the money supply is this critical thing. And this is what people need to understand about it. So be sure that you talk about a general area you want to have an impact in, especially if you're an undergraduate. And that's a good lead into your specific project, right? I'm very excited about climate change, but what I really need to understand is how do species adapt and when can we tell that they're, endangered? Then you do need to describe a particular project. Easier for graduate students than undergraduates, but we know that in the review process as well. But do pick something specific. Don't just talk in general terms. Give enough methodological details that show that you know how research is done in your area. But don't only do that, or you're going to lose a lot of people in the room who are going to go, I don't know if this is important or not, right? Make people care about the answer to your research question, right? Why is it important to know this very technical thing, right? So give them some context for it. And ideally, start with, this is the research area question I want to contribute to, and then at the end, get back there, right? My research is successful. This is what we're going to learn from it. Okay. So this is now some advice that came from one of our students who was awarded a GRFP and spoke at one of our workshops. We've sort of stolen their slides, but some of this is make sure that what you're saying makes sense and make sure it makes sense to somebody who may not be a specialist, right? So try just explaining to somebody in 10 or 12 sentences, this is what my research is about, right? You should be able to, have a logical progression that other people will understand. Have other people read your application. Hopefully your research mentor, right, that you have somebody who you're going to work with or you have worked with will give you advice on the technical aspects. Those 2 pages, ideally, they're going to give you some good feedback on. But also have both documents read by people who are not specialists and say, oh, this was compelling. Often when I read a personal statement, I'll say, well, here are the 5 things I remember from what you wrote. Is that what you want the reviewer to remember? Right? So think about what main ideas do I want them to walk away with? And I will say that unique stories, right? Not just facts. I worked hard. I studied a lot of science. Tell them something they can remember. Oh, that's that person, right? That's a good way to go. Then from a student, make sure you know exactly how you have to create those documents, right? Carol will give you the guidelines and the worksheet and or the checklist. Don't mess those up. Applications get thrown out on technicalities, so don't let that happen. And then you have to submit in this portal. Carol's going to talk about that as well, and she and Tracy are both available. If you sort of need to understand how something works, but take care of it early. If you're submitting at the last minute and something goes wrong, no guarantee you can get that in at the moment that you have to. And they're hardcore about that. The clock ticks to 5 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah, it's like
You're
when
done.
you're trying to submit a final project and your computer crashes.
Exactly.
You're like,
And,
"Oh."
and it happens, so.
And I will tell you that the NSF has a timer. And if you submit, it goes out to the 100th of a second. So if you're submitting at 5 PM on the day that it's due and you reach that 01, you're done. So don't be submitting on the day it's due, unless, I mean, I get things happen, but I don't recommend.
Don't plan for it.
I'm just saying it's not worth the gray hair. And I have gray hair, so.
Question, if we don't have a particular mentor in mind at the time of writing up our application, is that an issue, something that should be addressed?
I would say it probably depends which level you're at. The only level where it's really likely to be an issue is you're a second year graduate student, right? At that point, you should have somebody you're working with, or at least somebody that can read the details of what you're doing really clearly. Because that's the one with the expectation that you have a research plan, and in a lot of areas, I guess I'm going to qualify this a little further. In the lab sciences, you typically have a research mentor. You're attached to a research lab or a research group. In the social sciences, that is less true. So if that question came from someone in the social sciences, it is not absolutely required that you say, I am working under the guidance of this person. You're still taking classes, you've only finished your first year, but find somebody in the field who can read the technicalities of your research plan, because you just need that feedback. I can try to help identify some people in some of our departments, but that's going to be harder for me to do. Easier if you already have those connections. Okay, I think that wraps it up for me. Yep. Any questions about the scoring process or what happens to your application or what people talk about? We're good?
Oh, you're gonna like send us these slides?
Yeah, these slides will be posted. You'll actually have a link even to this video because we're just going to send it out to everybody who registered. And at the very end, I'll tell you about one other document that we'll try to put together on my part.
So if you're staying at CU Denver, or you want your grant to come to CU Denver, if you would please notify us, because as I mentioned earlier, there is one step, it's called routing, and that's an internal review and approval process. All money, the external money that comes into CU Denver has to go through that process. It's easier the earlier you do it. So if we can do that as part of your submission process, that would be great. Just shoot us an email at this email address. That's it'll go to all three of us, and one of us will pick it up and get back with you. We just need you to be in touch with us by September 25th. Okay? We'll walk you through that process. It'll go much easier. If you're not having your award come to CU Denver, skip that process. You don't need to do it. Okay? But if you think there's a chance that it will come to CU Denver, it's not that much more difficult. If by the time you get the award, you decide you're not going to be at CU Denver, it's no skin off of anyone's nose. Yeah, it's not going to change anything.
The other thing to know is that your narrative, those statements that you have to write don't have to be final.
Yeah.
When you go through it, they don't care if you have a well-written narrative. They care that we know what the budget looks like. We know who you are. We know what program you're likely to be.
So you and anyone submitting a reference letter needs a research.gov account. But you want to make sure that you do not already have one. So because having two is a monumental problem. It messes research.gov up significantly. And this is from somebody who had to. So just don't do it. Okay. So one thing you should do, like if you go in and, because somebody might have signed you up and you don't know it, if you've worked in a lab before or something. So you can just double check and have them, say like, I don't remember my login, and ask them to send you that information. And if they can't find you, then that means you don't have one. It's just a simple thing to do. So once you've confirmed that you do not have one, you need to register. And there's a step-by-step guide if you follow that link. Register early. Now would be good. So you can become familiar with the website, because you can go in and start getting things going. You can see what it looks like. In fact, once you log into research.gov, there's a place this isn't quite the right page. Before this, there's a GRFP fellowship place that you click on, and then this is what you get. And so this is where you start your process, okay? And you'll click on prepare application. And the first thing, like I said, you have to do is you have to, this is so small, I'm sorry, but you have to certify that you are all the things, that long list of things, those are all things that you are certifying. Again, this is a legal statement to the federal government. Just be careful. Not that anybody's gonna come after you, but I have seen things happen to people, I'm just gonna say. Once you get in, this is the application process, and this goes back to your question about the CV. The CV is not a separate document. It used to be, and that's why I kind of paused. I'm like, I forgot, they changed it. So it's no longer a separate document. You'll see that there's a section here for personal information. And that is where you start putting in your things, your education and work experience. So you put in all your education, that's where you put in all your transcripts and everything. There is a section that allows like 1,600 characters that allows you to talk about other things that you've done that's not listed as work experience. So any honors, any volunteer. I would put volunteer experience as work experience, but other honors that you've received and stuff like that, you have that separate box. So all of that is filled out online. That's part here, okay?
I think it also includes any articles that are published that you're a part of, because I know I've seen them. I don't know how they get input, but I know as a reviewer, I've seen that. So if you've participated in any of that, just be sure you include it. Awards are good too, whatever options you have.
So I'm looking at that section right now on my phone, and it says to list any significant academic honors, fellowships, scholarships, publications, and presentations. It has to be less than 16,000 characters. And just so you know, spaces and punctuation count as characters, okay? And it says, do not use special characters in the text box. So no ampersands, no trying to
Certainly
make it
no
shorter. Yeah,
Greek letters.
no Greek letters, those sorts of things, okay?
And if you've presented even at our internal research and creative activity symposium, like list those things, right? That shows that you've been interested in research. So
Yeah.
Think broadly about what kinds of things would count there.
So each one of these sections is where you can upload things. The references, that is your referees, you know, the people that you're asking to be write reference letters for you. That submit application, be careful. Don't submit early.
Don't submit before all your stuff's in.
It will check things and not allow you to do certain things, but there is a possibility once you've uploaded a draft or done something like that. So just avoid clicking on that section, I would say, okay? So all your applications must be uploaded in research.gov 5 p.m. local time. How do they know what is your local time? It's there's an address that you have to put in. You have to put in your address at the institution that you're at. So if you're from California, but you're here in Denver, and you'd rather use California time instead of Denver time, A, you're cutting it too close. B, you have to put in your address here in Colorado, so they're gonna base it off of Colorado time. So just don't put yourself in that position, okay? Life sciences are due October 16th. October 17th is computer and information science, engineering, materials research, psychology, social behavior and economic sciences, STEM education and learning. So if you want to be a science teacher, you can apply for an NSF GRFP, I'm just going to say. So if you know somebody that's not here, tell them. Engineering, October 19th, chemistry, geosciences, mathematical sciences, I was right, physics and astronomy, October 20th. Okay. These are rigid, there's no flexibility. And I have a checklist that we will post and send out to you. That kind of gives you some days of when to do things. And I recommend, so October 16th is a Monday. I recommend that you have submitted the Friday before and give yourself that weekend to play and go, yippee, I got that done. But if you can't give yourself that weekend, don't submit later than Sunday. Just don't be submitting on Monday. Just don't do that to yourself. And I say that as somebody who is a great procrastinator. So, so as soon as possible, go to the GRFP website, make sure you're eligible. Read the solicitation and the applicant guidelines. There's all sorts of things on the NSF GRFP website that is there to help you. If you don't have your transcripts, get them. If your transcripts are encrypted, you have to get an unencrypted version. Those are not, you cannot upload an encrypted document, okay? Identify your 5 references. Did you have a question?
Yes, do the transcripts have to be official transcripts?
Yes. Okay, except the one, like if you're in your second year of you're starting your second year of your graduate program, they won't give you an official transcript at this point. So just include what you can. But if you've graduated, you should have an official transcript, okay?
From the chat, if our field of study is 4 field, such as our anthropology, but your subfield is based in social and life sciences, paleo, anthropology, archaeology, should we just turn it in by the 16th in order for there to be no repercussions?
Yes. Early. I'm just gonna say early.
No,
Again,
you should turn it in by the 13th. That's right.
yeah, early. Just go early, okay?
And one thing, don't wait for last minutes for your official transcripts from here either. There's log jams at the registrar's office, so start that now too.
That's what I said. Get your transcripts going now, okay? Identify your 5 references and contact them about writing letters. If you can upload their information into your application, then they'll already get that invitation from NSF. They'll already have their code. And you're giving them a month and a half to write a letter for you. That's pretty nice, okay? Yes.
So I did like prior enrollment in high school, but those, the credit counted towards my CU Denver credits. So do I need to get a transcript from the community college as well?
You did concurrent enrollment, not through a CU Denver concurrent enrollment program.
Yeah, just.
But yeah, any institution of higher education that you've attended, those transcripts should all be part of this.
Yeah. You'll see when you get to that section that you can put in multiple institutions, and they tell you that you need to have a transcript from each institution. And if you didn't complete a degree, but you've left the institution, it should be an official transcript. The only one that does not need to be official is the one for the program that you're in right now, if you're starting your second year of your graduate degree. Okay.
So we should have, so I did, concurrent enrollment as well. And I got my full associates. So should I have an official transcript of my associate's degree, an
Yes.
official transcript of my bachelor's, and then an unofficial of my master's?
Yes. Okay. If you are applying so that your award's going to come to CU Denver, part of you being able to do that is you have to do a conflict of interest filing. And there's a process here. We have to demonstrate that you don't have a conflict of interest. And so letting us know that you're going to be submitting and you want the award to come to CU Denver, we do have to have you do that, and we'll walk you through how to do that as well, okay? This, over the weekend, if you don't have too much work already going from your first week of school, start with an outline based on the things that the ideas that have started flowing. Get that going as soon as you can. Talk with any advisors that you have about your research plan and your personal statement. Get those drafts going, and just get in the habit of writing that. In September and October, you're going to be updating your latest drafts. You're going to be uploading. You're going to continue editing. I have a more refined checklist that kind of gets you down to like October 13th. So, okay. But just kind of, there's some things that if you can start them today or this weekend, like making your transcripts requests today would be great. I'd highly recommend that. So how are we going to help you move forward? Well, we'll make these slides available to you so that you can look at them. We've got the recording. There's some guidance for your reference writers that we've got some documents for them, as well as on the NSF GRFP website. So if you just Google NSF GRFP, they have a whole website just for the GRFP program. they have some great advice for reviewers and a little bit of training reviewers, not reviewers, but referees can take, your reference letters can do. So you can do that. If you would like to have somebody review your proposal, write to our ARCA email, and we will help, you can at least get one review outside of your area if you would like that. But we need to hear from you well before October 5th. October 5th is a little bit late. We'll do our best. If you can do it earlier, letting us know that you're interested in that review. But obviously we don't want to be having somebody review a document that's so early in its stage that the review is not great. So you have to kind of balance where you're at in that stage, okay? As you prepare your application, if you have questions, let us know. So I will tell you that research.gov checks your margins, it checks your font, and you have to upload the PDF versions of your documents. Sometimes their checker isn't perfect. And you get into this loop of it won't accept your document. What can you do? It's such a big deal. It's part of their frequently asked questions. So they have lots of tips in their FAQs. But also you can reach out to us. But in those cases, if it's something like it's just not uploading, I'm going to tell you to call the help desk. And I've worked with the help desk a lot. They are truly helpful.
And
So
that's the help desk at
NSF, yeah. Yeah. They have an 800 number because NSF works from the East Coast to Hawaii. That's a broad timeline. I think they're open till 8 p.m. During the week. And so, you know, if you get to 5 p.m. you go, they're not going to be there. They're there. And so that's why trying to do some things early is helpful. Okay. I will say this, if you get into a bind that is not of your own making, and you've been working with the help desk and you have a ticket number and your deadline is there, they will help you work past that deadline. Okay. But if you're calling them for the first time at 4 p.m. and it's due at 5 p.m., that could be a problem. Okay. All right. So this is the main NSF GRFP website. There's some other application websites. They have a whole back site. They have videos. They have some webinars of their own coming up that you can attend. And then you can get in touch with us. Okay. Actually, one other thing we are planning to add. So we have a website for the Office of Research and Creative Activities in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. We're adding a section for graduate students.
We haven't told you that yet, Laura, but we are.
I told you.
I heard that here first. Rumblings.
Yeah, so we're gonna do that, and so that's where all of these documents will be. I'm gonna hop out of here. And hopefully I'm still connected, so just a second here. Yes, so we have this checklist that is available also.
So you have to switch your sharing settings because
I didn't do it right. I didn't share my screen. I shared the present PowerPoint. So this is a checklist that we have that I was talking about that outlines more things. There's a few more references down here as well. There's some there's a YouTube video. The professor is in.com is kind of helpful.
Lisa, to your question, we will also make these slides available. Yes.
Yes. The slides, the recording, this checklist.
It's all going up on the website.
All going up on the website. Trying to think what else.
And we'll email you with the information to access them.
Also, I downloaded this template from the NSF GRFP website, so they even have templates for your personal plan statements. But just so I would say go out to the NSF GRFP website. There's a lot of really helpful resources. And like I said, they have some upcoming, if you go to the events, they have an upcoming webinar too that you can attend if you aren't tired of webinars yet. So yeah. What other questions do you have? We have a few minutes left.
I just want to apologize for being like a little late. I had a morning meeting with the lab that I currently work in.
Good, we don't worry about that.
My question is a bit like more specific to my situation. So I'm a sociology major, but the research that I'm doing is on Black maternal health. So I don't know if that is like too,
So when you say Black maternal health,
yeah.
what specifically about Black maternal health?
So I'm just examining like why the disparity exists. And so the research that I did, I was just interviewing Black mothers about their experiences.
So why the disparity exists is not necessarily health-related research. It actually goes to other things. And so I do think that that is something that you can submit to NSF.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you were looking at, the biologics behind their, like if you're looking for some DNA clues or something like that about why there's that disparity, that would not fit. But if there's a socioeconomic reason that's coming from sociology, that's an okay topic.
Anything, but they actually list behavioral sciences. So anything that sort of describes how humans make decisions that help determine their outcomes, that's all NSF. You can sometimes get funding for those through NIH. I did for a long time. NIH is sort of moving their line a little further away from social sciences, and NSF is becoming more inclusive.
And I guess I have like a broader question. What are you guys like just looking for candidates in Colorado or kind of throughout the whole country?
You mean the NSF program?
Yeah.
So the NSF program is looking for the entire country.
Okay.
They absolutely, those 2,500 applications will represent the entire nation. So you are competing nationally.
And if you plan to go to a graduate program outside of Colorado, still eligible, we're happy to help.
Just for my reference for the future, if you're planning to go to a graduate program outside the US, is that gonna disqualify them?
Probably.
Don't tell them if you're going outside.
Well, no, they transfer the money to the institution, so there's not gonna be any.
They will not transfer it to an institution outside the United States.
So I just have a little bit of advice that I realized didn't get in the slide about reference writers. You do want to ask people pretty early and say, look, I'm preparing to write an application for a GRFP award. Everybody in the sciences will know it well because they're really NSF attuned. The behavioral and social sciences, they may not know as much about the program. So you might want, if you're emailing them, just provide a link to the program and say it's a really big scholarship fellowship program for graduate students, and just give them a little bit of background, but really good to give them sort of advance notice. I'm going to be applying. It will be due in October. I think they actually have a couple weeks after you submit to submit their letters. So they even have a slightly bigger window. You should absolutely promise them that you will send them your personal statement, your research statement, and if they would like, and this will be in a document that we post on our site, but bullet points that they might like to highlight, but it's really good if the letters reinforce what you all are talking about, right? And if they have evidence about your interest in a particular topic, they'll know, oh, yeah, she was in my class and taught, had a big discussion after class about this. So I know, they're really passionate about this. Anything they can do to dovetail their letters to help fit your application, really a good sign. It just shows they know stuff about it.
So just to reiterate that, so reference letters are due October 27th across all fields. Okay, 5 p.m. Eastern time. That's the one exception that NSF makes about not working with different time zones. So if your referee lives in Hawaii and it's going to be due at 11 a.m. that day, if there's somebody that day. Okay.
Lisa has a question in the chat.
Just a second before we get there. Remember I talked earlier about your address, when you put in your address, if you happen to put in your address and you put in your address as being New York, then your proposal is due on the due date, New York time, not Denver time. Okay. And Lisa's question.
How about the experience of pregnancy and birth within the military community from an applied medical anthropology perspective?
What do you mean from applied?
Can you extrapolate on applied? Yeah, medical anthropology. Waiting to see who comes to chat. Sounds fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I'm not a part of the NSF.
If it has something to do with how pregnancy and childbirth and parenthood impacts a, you know, progression through a military career or something along those lines, clearly behavioral.
Medical anthropology as an aspect of social science.
Then you should be fine. Just, like if you, again, in this situation, if you were trying to look at, the biologics of, you know, what happens or, you know,
Cortisol levels or something like that.
yeah, or if you're looking at, the medical side of that, but if you're looking at the social, societal impact of, or those sorts of things, then, yeah, you're fine.
Thanks for coming. You'll get an email. We'll send it around to everybody.
If you have a question, about that, you can also, on the NSF GRFP website, you can contact one of the program officers. Do it now, don't wait, and present your topic and ask for their, feedback on your topic.
Lisa continues, as it will be applied to potential outcomes, what works, what doesn't, and how we can improve those outcomes.
If you're talking about medical outcomes, if you're talking about societal outcomes, behavioral outcomes, you're okay, but if you're talking about medical outcomes, you're not. But that could be a good proposal for NIH if you are talking about medical outcomes. And
Maternal and fetus experiences.
I would, at this point, I would probably go to the NSF program officer and let them walk you through that one.
So I guess would resource management go under behavioral or kind of go.
So you've waded through that. There is a really long list of
No,
what, so I think you have to pick sort of a main discipline.
Yeah.
That's probably where you're getting your degree. But then, as soon as you go in there, you can combine different skills.
Yeah.
Okay.
There,
and it's a long list. Yep.
so do look at that in advance. You don't have to pick them yet. But as you flesh out your proposal, you go, yeah, it's probably more this than this. You know, you may alter the list a little bit, but sort of knowing what the broad grouping is worth it.
All right, well, thank you all for coming.
Yep.
We appreciate having you here and there. And we'll get things out to you. We'd like to post things on the website rather than sending like an email with a bunch of attachments. I think that's not necessarily productive for you. But if you have any questions, let us know.